Mm, Take it away, Kevin.
All right. Well, thank you, Lauren, and thank you guys, and thank you to the Ag Venture Group for all the things that you guys do. Appreciate it very much. Why don't I kick it off with having my small team? We're still scattered. I'm here in my home office, but yeah, I think I know most of you guys. So I've done a lot of things. I've been around for a while. I've done startup companies. I helped start Ag Startup Engine, the fund that you all invest in. So appreciate you doing that and serve as Director of Agricultural Entrepreneurship at Iowa State University. But last June started this company that we'll talk about today, BitCorn Technology. So Karan, Ethan, and Kale, if you guys would introduce yourselves briefly, please.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. My name is Karan. I graduated from Iowa State last year with a mechanical engineering degree, and I got the email I wanted to see from Kevin 4 days before graduation asking if I wanted to hop on to this journey. So knowing that it was a company that was going to deal with this type of intersection, I was like, I had to bring along also people that I thought would be of interest, and that's how I kind of led it to Kale and Ethan as well.
Yeah, I'm Kale. I guess I'm the finance guy. I also went to Iowa State, did my bachelor's and master's in finance, and came on board right away because I heard crypto and agriculture going together. I've uh, I've kind of followed in Kevin's footsteps of entrepreneurship. I spent most of my time during undergrad spinning up some of my own little businesses, and I've been, steeped in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin since 2020. And I think it came to be about July, we realized we were going to need a really good software engineer, and that's where Ethan came on.
Yeah, so I'm the software engineer. I graduated from Iowa State this maybe with my computer science degree. I was originally kind of buddies with Kale and Karan, and like Kale said, they needed somebody with a software background, so they got me on the team, and I've just been working with software since.
So one of my advantages of working at Iowa State is I get to hang around neat young people and maybe have some access to talent that other people don't. So thank these guys for taking the leap of faith. So yeah, and I won't pull up my slide deck yet, and I asked Zach to be with us as well. In a nutshell, we think that the world is beginning to transition to new monetary rails, and one that's much more decentralized. And I'm a free people and free enterprise guy, but free market money, I think, for all of us is a new notion. Um, I had some of the young guys actually we've invested with Ag Startup Engine in probably 2015 or 16 asked me if I was paying attention to Bitcoin. I hadn't paid much attention. I had heard of it. It came from the open source software movement, which I had been familiar with. The first server farm I built back in the 1990s here in Ames with my first company, eMarkets. We probably had a $2 million server farm come 1999, all running Linux open source software. So I was aware of Bitcoin coming out of that community, but hadn't paid enough attention. So essentially what we're building at BitCorn is hardware and software that enables a transition to more decentralized finance for agriculture. Sometime in last year, I was speaking to a friend, and they said, "Have you talked to Zach Smith about Bitcoin?" And I've known Zach since probably Zach 2021. I had a student in my class who said there's this guy from near where I come from who's working on something called Stock Crapper. And so I got aware of that. We talked about a lot of things, but I was not aware of Bitcoin. So anyway, I asked Zach to kick us off today just to talk about his own Bitcoin journey and how he thinks about it. Because while I own a little bit of farmland, I'm not like a real farmer, but Zach is. So Zach, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I came to this about the same time I met Kevin. I was interested in buying, for those that know, the mill in Fertile, Iowa. It was up for sale, and I was interested in that property because I was thinking about buying it and creating an Airbnb experience venue there. And I was sharing the property and the details of it with a friend from Kansas City. And I was showing him the water wheels in the basement because the mill sits on the Winnebago River. And he said, "What are you going to do with those water wheels?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll restore them or something and make them into something cool, maybe ground flower or sell the power back to Alliant Energy or something." And he's like, "No, you should mine Bitcoin with that." And I'm like, "Well, why would I do that?" And I had a similar understanding of most people about Bitcoin. I thought it was internet money. I thought it was silly, kind of laughed at him. But my buddy was a super smart businessman from Kansas City, and he essentially convinced me to actually dig into it and understand it. And I bought the Bitcoin standard. And at the age of 42, I, for the first time, finally understood like what money actually was. I never really thought about it in those terms. And when you do, and you put the work and effort into studying the characteristics of Bitcoin, you come, I think if you put the time in, you come to the same conclusion that folks like Kevin and I have, and others on the call, that it's a superior asset. And so I became interested in it. I didn't actually procure any for the next couple of years, but that happened after another mutual friend exposed me to a guy that was able to kind of put the nail in the coffin and get me over the edge to commit to it. And the reason that I'm interested in it, in the business of farming specifically, is I have a problem to solve in the next 20 years. My family, my mom and dad own about 528 acres of land, and the goal was always for each one of us 5 kids to inherit an 80. And at the time of the death, all of the 80s will be split up, and then the last two 80s, I'll either have the right first refusal to buy myself, or they'll go on public auction. And so it's my goal to be able to keep my dad's land intact. And in order to do that, I had to have a strategy that would get me there in the next, whatever, 20 years. And so a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to buy a piece of land for $14,000 an acre next to one of my dad's. And I was looking at Bitcoin at the same time. And I'm like, well, what's going to put me in a better position to be able to achieve that goal in 20 years? I could buy the land, or I could buy Bitcoin. And when I looked at Bitcoin, it was like, well, this is the best performing asset in the last 15 years. And it's a great store of value. There's just a ton of properties that make sense with it. And I said, well, I can either buy land and have it appreciate at 5%, or conservative estimates would put Bitcoin's CAGR at somewhere between 20 to 25%. Probably it's been 67% CAGR over the last 10 years. That will flatten out over time, but that's essentially the strategy that I've made a choice to do. And so I'll Kevin, is it cool if I share my screen and show that example? Let's see if I can.
Yeah, as long as Lauren has enabled you to do it, hopefully.
Be good.
Okay, so last night on Claude, with AI here, I created a sliding calculator. Can everybody see my screen? Good.
Got it.
Okay, so the choice is, spend $1 million to buy 80 acres, or put it into Bitcoin and get potentially a 25% CAGR. So I just entered this in. It's a sliding formula. You can adjust the percent return. I've got a low end for land, a high end for land, and the 20-year outcome. So I looked at this and I said, well, I can buy that 80 acres, and in 20 years I can have essentially $3 million worth of land, or potentially $86 million dollars of worth of Bitcoin. And so when I did the math and thought about it that way, what the potential that would mean for my family, not only to be able to buy the farmland, but to be able to pass something down beyond that to my kids and grandkids, for them, especially in the world of AI right now, with the threats to, that's all I worry about right now, or what are my kids that are coming out of college here and entering the workforce in the next 2 years. What kind of world are they going to have? And so I look at Bitcoin as an opportunity, as a hedge, not only to protect my family's legacy with farmland ownership, but whatever the crazy world is going to be in the future. So that's
what happens if you click that up to 30%, Zach, which is where I've been putting my.
Yeah, so I like to be conservative. I think I
Sure.
just stopped. I think I just stopped sharing. Here, I'll just do it here. I'll put it to 30%. Yeah, then it's 190 million. is what that would be worth. So I had a kid here a couple weeks ago ask me, um, you know, why do you keep hitting on this Bitcoin thing? And I said, he's like 25 or 26. He's like, I'm thinking about doing it, but it wouldn't it be better just to buy land? And I said, well, if you would have bought an 80 in 2015 for 600,000, today it'd be worth about 950. If you would have put 600,000 into Bitcoin, you would have enough capital to buy 16 sections worth of land today. And so it's a big lift, especially for people in ag, to think about this internet money thing and get beyond some of the nuances. We're programmed that land is the best asset of all time, and but in a volatile world, one of the reasons I like it too is that the government determines whether or not we own land, and if something wild happened and we needed to get out of here, you can't take the home quarter with you. But if you can remember 12 or 24 words, you can take your Bitcoin assets anywhere in the world. And 5 years ago, that maybe didn't have as much value or punch. But I think, with the dynamics that are going on in geopolitics right now, that's another advantage to think about with taking a position and holding this asset. I think what Kevin and his group are doing is absolutely fantastic. It's forward thinking. They're ahead of their time. But I think it's incredibly important, whether a kid is 25 years old and farming to utilize BitCorn, or, if you're 60 years old and thinking, am I going to buy the next neighboring 80 acres? I think if it was me and I already owned land, I think I would look hard at getting some part of my portfolio into having exposure to Bitcoin. So I'll shut up.
Thanks, Zach. Well, I bought some land in 2012 in Nebraska that my brother farms, and that's been good. But yeah, our 15-year note gets done next year. But yeah, you make me think of that in a new way as well. All right, guys. So yeah, what are we thinking and I'll do a demo here in just a moment, but like what problems are we trying to solve? And the one is eternal to agriculture, and that's essentially what I would call the cost price squeeze. These inflationary incidents can start out well for us because sometimes our prices rise faster than the cost, but it like never ends well, and we're sort of in that now. And using the USDA's own number right now, they're using 2011 index, and so our prices received for grains right now are 70% of what they were in 2011, but our prices paid are 1.7 times what we paid in 2011. So, I mean, it feels bad because it is bad. And so we're decentralized in what we do in agriculture, but what we buy, inputs, finance, and who we sell to, essentially processing industry, those things are all centralized. And so it puts us, it's tough enough to battle weather and market conditions and everything else, but from a money perspective, we go into the fight with kind of one hand proverbially tied behind our backs. And then the financial rails are creaky. And we had a meeting with a very finance-oriented large farmer from Northwest Iowa, and he just went into, when I deliver a truckload of soybeans or corn that are priced, like I should get paid, like then. And he figures it costs him $10,000 a year just in cost of money sort of a thing. And that was interesting and something we had not thought much about. So essentially, what's our solution? So our hardware, and I'll hold this up to the camera, is that we build custom computers that we call BitCorn nodes. Karan has taken the lead in that. Karan, do you want to give a thumbnail sketch of what our nodes are?
Sure. So it looks pretty cool, I think, off bat. It's like a cool black Iron Man suit, but really what it is inside it has all the internal CPU to run the software, and more importantly, the Bitcoin blockchain, which is necessary, which is meaning all the transactions from when Bitcoin started in 2009 up until this very minute, to where it keeps it tracking and has its ledger up to date. In the like every 10 minutes it gets verified. So internally, it has a CPU to run the program. On top of that, it has the self-custodial wallet aspect, since you have that entire ledger stored onto your node, and it has 2 terabytes of storage as well. So The projected rate of the increase in terms of the letter size would be 50 GB per year, I'd assume. So that would put us around a 10-year time frame for this device to be stable. And who knows in the future if anything else happens with an upsurge in memory, it can easily be swapped out for more memory. So internally, it's just your CPU, your memory, and then the case itself protects both aspects by giving a cooling fan internally that you can program as well. And it's designed to be plugged in 24/7, but at the same time also be used in use 24/7 as well. So that's what this screen is right here. Once you power it on, and then you go on to the local link that you are provided with it, you're able to access this screen, and then that's kind of transitioning from the hardware stuff to the software side now.
So I'm sitting in my home office on an acreage just north and west of Ames, and so my node is right above where I sit from my walkout basement office, and so I have Starlink for my internet access, and so I am operating one of 25,000 BitCoin nodes. I think I lost my screen. Whoops.
Okay, stop sharing.
Pulling that up, does that have onboard battery backup, power loss? No sense.
Does
Power
not.
losses. Okay. So it just goes offline, but non-volatile memory type situation. And you're saying a 10-year life expectancy anyway for that hardware anyway, or is that more of a software limitation?
You want to answer that, Karan?
Yeah, hardware wise, it would last that way as well. And I think it'll just progress as the software is going. I think the only two things is that it's just keeping a track every 10 minutes. So it's just loading little bits of data of what transactions are going on the Bitcoin network. And then the software gets its own updates like any app on an iPhone. So those are the only two ever changing things. So just based off those two factors, we know that it'll be pretty good for that time frame. There won't be anything substantial that could come in between to where it might alter the capability of what it could provide.
And sorry, just take that one more step. The risk factor, if something happens, that device is lost, stolen, crushed by a tree branch, whatever, then within the Bit network, you're able to then get a new device utilizing your existing pass codes, etc., to re-access and reestablish that link for your own assets.
Exactly correct. Yeah, exactly correct.
Yeah, so as long as you have your private keys, yeah, we'll be able to restore everything if it melts down, which hopefully we've designed it not to happen, but child or grandchild spills Kool-Aid on it, whatever can happen and can go wrong. Yeah, we can restore it and get it up and going.
So you
All right,
said
so
you have this in your house. Are you actually capturing the heat with it then, or what's your ultimate goal? Just the Bitcoin mining or heating?
it is not a Bitcoin mine, it is a node. So yeah, mining takes very powerful machines and they create the new blockchain that is part of the software protocol that runs Bitcoin. But the screen that you see here is I am one of 25,000 nodes. And so they perform essentially like a software handshake that, like the miners, participates in verifying that all the new blocks come and all the pieces of those blocks are in fact good.
Can you back up a little then and probably get a little bit more of the basics for some of the people that'll watch this later? Like I said, I'm not sure. Mark, how up to date are you on Bitcoin? How about you, Randy?
Well, I could sum up my pure knowledge in this subject matter with about 2 words: absolute zero.
I would concur with that. It's really Greek to me. I'm intrigued by it, but I just don't understand the whole concept of the whole thing. So yeah, I'm trying to learn.
So
all right, let me take just a
give a
moment
little
to
basic lesson first and then dive in.
Yeah, and I apologize, my Chrome keeps crashing. So I've pulled up what's called a mempool. This is kind of a visual representation of the different blocks. And so in the upper part of the screen, you see a purple block that's 900 with a number 941,427. And so that is the latest block that was mined for Bitcoin. And so essentially one Bitcoin is represented by one block, and there's a number of different blocks that make up each, and that's where blockchain comes from. But about every 10 minutes, a new block is mined that contains new Bitcoin transactions that happen. So as I scroll down, you'll see that there's a new, visually here, a new block that is being mined. And there's different parts of that. So the larger blocks represent bigger transactions amounts that have been mined. And so this block that I'm highlighting right now is 0.68 Bitcoin. So 0.68 times $70,000, whatever that works out to. So about $50,000 worth of Bitcoin is what that represents. And so within the next 10 minutes, that will be mined and verified.
And it showed the $25. That's the transaction fee to do that.
Yeah, that's the transaction fee for essentially, yeah, mining that. Part of the rewards for doing that.
So that's how the miners make their money then, correct?
Correct.
So how do the nodes then partake in that?
So there's no guaranteed fees for running a node. It's essentially just part of being the open source community, but it doesn't cost much either. Lauren, you'd asked about the heat. I mean, this takes less energy than like a laptop computer, so it doesn't cost me much of anything. Now, there are ways of setting up, well, maybe I'll go to our BitCorn software. So let me skip to our BitCorn software. And so I click another link and I'm going to be on our development box here so that I don't mess up any of the work that Ethan has done. But yeah, I'm on our BitCorn dashboard. And so we see that Bitcoin, which trades 24 hours of the day, is currently at $70,609 per Bitcoin. I have my wallets for what I have on my node. And so there's different parts of that. There's my main Bitcoin wallet where I have 2.47 Bitcoin that I'm self-custodying on that. It shows kind of a list of transactions that I've done. If I chose to move some of that to cold storage, and there's different devices for doing that so that it was completely offline, I could do that. I have 0.12 Bitcoin, about 800 or $8,000 sitting in a Lightning node. So that's what's called a layer two. And so it's a cheaper way to move Bitcoin from place to place and to actually do transactions than moving it on the chain. So I leave some of that in Lightning. And Lauren, you ask about earning. So there are certain ways of keeping some of your Bitcoin as part of this Lightning network, and you can earn fees for and essentially yield. Think of like returns on a savings account or a CD or something like that. You can earn that to put some of that money to work. And then I have some of the money in a USDC wallet. So USDC is a type of stable coin, if you've heard of that. So it's like a dollar, except it is a digital dollar.
The cold storage then is that you put it there kind of like a CD then, long-term type deal, or?
Yeah, so let me pull out an example of that.
I'm not afraid to
So,
ask the dumb questions, so.
oh, nothing is a dumb question because it hasn't been that long that I've been trying to learn some of this stuff. So this is a cold storage device where I store private keys for stuff that doesn't sit. It doesn't sit on a Coinbase account. It doesn't sit on my node that's sitting upstairs. And so what I have on here right now is uh, I call it Hattie's University or Startup Fund. We got our first granddaughter in October of 2024. And I told my son, her father, that I would start saving some money for her for college like we did for our own kids. He never sent me her social security number. And I started on the Bitcoin thing. So I'm saving money in that. So I could, for example, in the cold storage, I could take some money from my main Bitcoin wallet, for example, and transfer it to my cold storage on this cold key device. So I can buy and sell Bitcoin if I want to do that. Has been one of our challenges that we finally got through from a software development perspective. But let's say I want to move my screen around just a bit. I think $70,000 is a pretty good idea. So if I wanted to buy $1,000 in Bitcoin, I get a quote on that. We buy through Coinbase. So I have a Coinbase personal account that is linked to a bank account that I've got. We're quoting that at 70,461. So that goes through using Coinbase, but instead of putting that on Coinbase, essentially that gets bought through Coinbase, but sits in self-custody on my node. So Ethan, is there anything that you wanted to add about us having developed the ability to buy using Coinbase?
Yeah, so again, this is the demo version. So on the real application, we had to go contact Coinbase, which is a Bitcoin vendor, about using one of their very gated features called or Bitcoin on-ramp or Coinbase on-ramp, and that essentially allows users to go ahead and buy Bitcoin through the Coinbase application. Um, Basically, what happens is it uses the Bitcoin address on your node, and then it brings you to a separate page, and then you're able to buy with your Coinbase account or just a regular debit card. The interesting thing about that was Coinbase has never seen an application like ours before, which it took a while for our application to be approved since that feature was very gated and they really only had it for specific applications that people submitted to them. So, yeah,
so we proved to them we weren't drug dealers or gun runners.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we can send and receive same way. And so we've begun to assemble our network. So if I wanted to send some Bitcoin to somebody in our network, and so our first node is set up with Dennis Campbell over in near DeWitt, Iowa. So if I want to give Dennis a morning surprise, send him 100,000 Satoshis, which is only $74. But he has another node on our network, so I can send from his node or my node to his node, give him a little good morning present. We have a charting feature here. So at the top, we have something we call the chart. And so Bitcoin is very interesting in that it follows what's called a power law. And I won't get into the nerdy mathematics of it all, but most financial assets follow what's called an exponential regression. Bitcoin follows a power law regression, which is how things grow in nature. And so strange though it may seem, Bitcoin, although digital, is a natural money in the way that it behaves mathematically. And so in a nod to Hattie, we can do a projection to 2042, the year that she turns 18 years old. And so when I look out at 2042, the power law trend, and it may be higher, it may be lower, but the power law trend indicates that Bitcoin will be at $6 million per Bitcoin at that point. So when we first did this, and my wife Patty's like, all right, Kevin, these projections you have of what you think Bitcoin will do. And Zach showed his earlier of 25% annualized return. Anyway, she's like, how much, what will be the dollar value of the savings that you have for Hattie? And so I did the math and I said, $800,000. And she said, you can't give $800,000 to an 18-year-old. And I said, I'm the grandfather. I can do whatever the heck I want to. Anyway, we'll let her parents figure that out. So anyway, and some more custom things. We track what we call the corn Bitcoin price. How many bushels of corn does it take to buy a Bitcoin? Because our sort of theory on this is that there'll be better times to turn and worse times to turn corn into Bitcoin. And I'm not a very good grain marketer, but I think it's actually helped me a little bit to start thinking about corn prices in terms of Bitcoin, just for another dimension to sort of track things. Anyway, that's just sort of a charting feature. Again, we've got our contacts. Our goal here is to build a network. And then getting into a couple features that will roll out this one hopefully later this year and at least on an experimental basis. And that's the ability to begin selling some of your commodities for probably stable coins to start. And I've kind of got a level here where I can play both grain buyer and grain seller. But let's say I want to sell from my farm in Nebraska some truckload of whatever. If I'm the elevator manager, I punch in what the scale ticket is. I'm buying corn. I earn 2.5 bushels at 13.1% moisture, test weight of 57.1. Seller is Kevin Kimle Farms, LLC. Buyer, South Central Nebraska is CPI. Delivering against a contract number. Maybe I'm delivering to, I most usually deliver to CPI's location in Holstein, Nebraska. $443 for a payment price on the corn. Get paid in US, USDC, US, again, these are stable coins. Any other notes I wanted to put in there? Review settlement, just below $4,000. Submit that settlement, that shows up. Probably have a two-stage process for that grain elevator. That probably gets punched in by somebody at the front desk or something like that. The grain merchandiser, the CFO goes in, looks at it, confirms that that's it. That ultimately settles and that gets paid from the node sitting at CPI's headquarters, ultimately to my node at Kimle Farms are here in my hacienda in Ames, Iowa. So anyway, faster settlement, presumably could get paid in Bitcoin, but I could choose at that point to take my stable coins and turn some of that into Bitcoin if I want to. And then, yeah, I'll finish up here in just a moment. This will probably be a 2027 feature. Tokens, what I would like to do is provide the ability, and this was something we were playing with at my last company in 2008, Decision Commodities, with offers. Anyway, essentially over-the-counter offers where you can put offers out above the market in a decentralized marketplace and get paid like a call option, but directly, so that you don't have to have a brokerage account and that sort of thing. So I'll offer up my corn, new crop corn at $5 per bushel for a certain number of bushels, and is somebody willing to pay me essentially a premium, like a call option kind of a thing. And then we have a lender, and so this is really inspiration from them with an interest in giving their customers who have money borrowed against stored grain the capacity to sell that grain to get rid of just the storage risk from it, but then preserve the capacity to have some upside if prices do rally. And so we're calling this tokenized instrument an upsider. And so if I had done some of that, for example, so I've got Kevin Kimle West Farms, LLC on here. And so I've sold presumably 25,000 bushels of corn, but I think my scenario on this was I had sold it in January. I have a base price or like a strike price of 450. If it gets above that, I'm in the money. I've got this on July futures, and so that was at 474. So I'm 24 cents in the money on that. So essentially, that's worth that 25,000 times 24 cents is $6,000 is what that's worth on the market now. If we were in trading hours and I decided I wanted to sell some of that, I could sell 5,000 bushels, let's say, out of that 25,000. Review settlement, that'll be $1,200 that would again uh, go from whoever is holding that to my node. So $1,200 ultimately goes to my node.
Kevin,
Anyway,
could you
then,
run over the Sage model real quick too?
yeah, sorry about that. Forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, one of our purposes very simply in putting these nodes out is to help with self-custody, but it's to help you do a better job buying Bitcoin, whether it's 50 bucks a month or $5,000 a month or whatever. But I've asked Kale to take the lead in helping us think about how we help you buy Bitcoin better. So Kale, you want to share with them the Sage model?
Yeah, so most of the time, if people are allocating to a new asset, they're going to do simple dollar cost averaging. One of the things that happens, when we go out and talk to farmers about their interest in buying Bitcoin for the first time, will they say their biggest concern, one, volatility, which is very normal for a newer asset to have a lot of volatility. And I think one of my concerns for people starting their Bitcoin journey is the emotions of figuring out when to buy and sell. A lot of people, just by nature, are going to get interested when prices peak. And so a lot of people start their Bitcoin journey buying the top of a bull market, and then they have to ride those emotions down. The Sage model is based on a lot of valuation charts that I aggregate, create a Z-score. But really, what it does is it's a model to take the emotions out and systemize your investing. So you buy larger sums when Bitcoin is oversold, it's undervalued, and you're not buying as much on a regular DCA basis when it might be overvalued. So it kind of flips the script, and the biggest concern for farmers, Bitcoin's volatility, ends up working in their favor. And this, when we ran a simulation at the same time period from Kevin's first investment into Bitcoin, and it outperformed a regular dollar cost averaging benchmark by over 100% over a few years.
Yeah, so you've got a cool strategy essentially where you've developed this gauge of where we at, and we're currently at undervalued territory. So buying at sort of a 2x what you would do normal dollar cost averaging. So I've set this up. So I would normally be buying at fair value 100 bucks a week. And so this model ramps me up to $200 a week with the way that we've got it set up.
Kevin, can you see Joe's question here?
Let me click on that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd be in a spot to talk or when it would be appropriate, and I just didn't want to kind of forget the overall thoughts. So didn't want to interrupt either. I ramble.
Joe, your questions are always very thoughtful. So on volatility, yeah, hurdles for
It's
acceptance.
just, if I'm looking at this from the standpoint of what hurdles from a traditional farmer viewpoint, I'm looking at from my own window and hopefully from a general farm window. And if like I said, I looked at it in mid 2010s, really regret not buying that, single station, mini high-end homeowner's computer, because wow, that thing would have paid huge dividends now. But it feels like from an outsider, this thing's so commercialized now. When we hear about little Bitcoin mining farms and such forth, it's like the goodies out of it is a feeling. It's commercialized and there's no room for a small individual to start getting really involved. So that's kind of one preconceived notion, I guess, to overcome. Another one is just over its history, seeing some of these not the normal market swings, but the huge movers of value and how fast they occur overseas or domestic. So that's a hard thing I think for a lot of folks to wrap around that level of risk anyway. And then kind of the third point was just, we've seen here from a national level a push to outlaw it, to try and track it, to, you know, tax it. And at one point, just working through tax season here, it's a huge call out by the CPA firms. Did you trade or do you have only ownership? So the whole idea is we have this monetary source that is independent of governmental organizations, oversight, risk, etc. But yet, for a person trying to do everything by the letter of law and dot I's and cross T's, you're self-report, self-damning, or whatever, and just trying to understand how that functions is going to be something I think a lot of, it doesn't have to be a farmer, but just it's a hard thing the way we've been programmed. I think to Zach's point of how money works and looking into that, and I've done a little bit of banking history, read a couple things, and it's like, wow, that's a whole nother wormhole, rabbit hole to chase. So trying to put all those pieces together, I guess.
Yeah, very thoughtful questions, all of them.
None of them probably make sense, though. They're not coherent,
No,
but
no, they
that's
do. I
my
mean,
brain.
from just an overall volatility perspective, I mean, I bought my first Bitcoin I looked it up in 2021 for $47,000, and then we went to one of our streaks, rode that thing down to 17,000, kept buying kind of, but yeah, I can look back now with 2020 hindsight, like with anything, and be like, should have bought a whole bunch more. Um, Last year, I moved some of my stock portfolio to Bitcoin, which I bought more than $200,000 just to be fully transparent at $115,000, which doesn't look great now compared to if I'd kept that in equities. But I'm fine with it, and I'm getting set to move about the same amount or even more from my equities portfolio into it. But that's a longer term thing, So I always think you have to categorize where do I have my capital and how long term or not am I thinking about that?
I want to add to that, Kevin. So I use that 10-year time horizon of buying land in 15 versus now. There were five drawbacks greater than 40% of the price, the biggest of which was like 83% at one point. So the volatility is definitely there, but it's you don't buy Bitcoin and think you're going to get out of it in 6 months. You'll get owned by that because of the volatility. But as they say, when you understand that the volatility is a feature, and you buy and hold for the long term and find vehicles to be able to milk it over that time period. So.
Yeah, if you've got capital any more than 3 to 4 years, I mean, being in Bitcoin is fine. So kind of the way I think about it, at least.
I guess, it's an easier analogy for myself. I've always been intrigued by the silver market. It's gold on light version where you can actually buy ounces. And I guess you recognized an opportunity back here a few years ago when silver tanked to sub $20 levels. Like, okay, yeah, that's an opportunity to buy based on some historical trends. It's volatile as well, but it's not nearly as volatile, but it does show long-term trends and plays. And wow, now, I mean, holy cow, what that investment's worth today
Yeah, and
versus just a
I don't
couple
want to
years
share
ago.
somebody
So
else's information, and some of you guys will know the folks, but I won't say it. But yeah, somebody who is buying 2 modules from Midland to build a shrimp farm had a lot of silver, and so they traded out of some of their silver at prices that are today to buy 2 modules and expand their shrimp farm. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And anyway, yeah, I mean, we had a couple over for dinner last night, and we're just having this sort of a thing, and they own real estate and they've done well, and they're thinking about Bitcoin, but from what do we leave for our grandchildren? sort of perspective. So yeah, we all have to think about sort of what we want to do. And Joe, on the government issue, yeah, I mean it's interesting to think of, but I just love the self-custody thing. And we'll at BitCorn give you all the tools so you can report correctly. Right now, Bitcoin is treated as a capital asset. I do think before the end of this Trump administration, we'll hopefully get it to the point where it's not a capital asset, it's just money. And whatever. My libertarian self loves the idea of government that has to prove that they add value and we should pay taxes to them rather than just confiscating it, which is sort of the method today. Um, and it's hard for any of us to remember, but free banking and free market money is part of our American heritage. I've done a case study on this agricultural entrepreneur named John Deere, and he struggled during the first 30 years of his career with kind of the money in the country because it was kind of a free banking era, and there were Spanish silver dollars floating in every other darn thing. But he
Well,
figured it out.
to that point, the one of the I think from what little I understand of the Bitcoin methodology, it's kind of farmers were one of the first ones to participate in that because we had various commodities we could come to a mutual understanding and trade on. I have corn, you have hogs, we can trade. And that still is being done today with the neighbor. It's like, okay, he's helping me providing labor. I'm doing some custom work for him. We don't have to record a transaction on that and track that. And we try to maximize that whenever we can. And this does seem like an extension of that anyway. And it's one of the few areas where we can still do that probably within society today, especially that's going cashless.
No, I think it is in our muscle memory. And I've told this story before, and this goes back to my dad, who's been gone since 2006. But my dad farmed, and this is, early 1980s, and when I'm 15, 16 years old and becoming convinced how much smarter than I am than my dad, I'm looking at some of how he ran his world. And yeah, he'd buy like a piece of used equipment from a neighbor, and he didn't pay him. He delivered a load of pigs in their name and had the packing company pay them. And and then he's given half a beef to a guy in town with four small kids and not a good paying job. And then the guy comes out and does all the repair work on our buildings. Anyway, at some point I'm like, Dad, like your horked up way of like trading and barter, just like that can't work out. And he's like, Kevin, it works out. And part of it was his, let's call it tax management strategy. But part of it was just, yeah, understanding he deals in the world of trading real things. And so it's kind of natural to understand arbitrage opportunities. And so I've had discussions, for example, with Canadian phosphate fertilizer suppliers. It's sort of like if we get enough farmers on this and offered to buy in bulk and pay you in Bitcoin, would you be interested in talking? Yeah. Yeah. Discounts for Bitcoin, definitely, talk to me.
So,
So I got a question.
Kevin,
This is Mark. Do you have margin calls on the Bitcoin when it tanks or fluctuates during the day? Is it like a commodity or not?
It is not. It is
Okay.
not. And our goal with our peer-to-peer tokens is the same thing. It's not a margined account.
Really, it is kind of like the silver thing. I mean, I kind of look at it as modern silver and gold that's easily transferable and not buried in the bottom of a gun safe.
Yep.
But you purchase it, its value may go up or down, but you own the asset at the end of the day.
Yep.
Kevin, Randy, I've got a couple of questions. One of them fairly simple, the other one probably not. As I listen to the conversation, so you take money, whether it's in the form of stocks traded out and purchase Bitcoin, and let's say 5 years from now, you have X amount of money sitting in Bitcoin. how does someone take that money and either get it out of the system, one, or two, go out and buy a piece of equipment? How would someone do that as with the way things are currently structured?
Yeah, so if I had Bitcoin on my node, like in the wallet that we showed you, I could get that out if I wanted to transact that in the real world by using so the demo that I had, I linked to Coinbase, and that is linked to my bank account. And so I took money out of my Wells Fargo bank account to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. In the same way, I could say I want to take $100,000 worth of the Bitcoin that I have in my wallet, and I'll go through Coinbase and I'll sell that at today's price, and that will go to my Wells Fargo account. So then it's in dollars that I can use through my
So an actual
checking
fairly
account.
simple transaction then back into your local physical bank and checking account.
Yeah.
Yeah. My,
Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if we have somebody who's sort of at that stage of the career where they begin selling a fair amount of commodities for Bitcoin, and all of a sudden on their node they've got, I don't know, let's say $1 million or $2 million worth of Bitcoin. I think we probably want to have a pretty deep discussion about um, probably what's called multi-signature authority to move money from that. I mean, we
Right.
have, we'll see what happens. We think most people will be starting small on this, but we've already, as a team, had conversations about how we help our customers kind of do security the right way. And it's like, well, what could go wrong? And we've talked about, yeah, what could go wrong with the hardware, which we talked about earlier. But I mean, this is never pleasant to talk with somebody about, but it's like, okay, divorce. We've got a spouse who's mad that knows what the keys are, and all of a sudden my Bitcoin's gone. Like it's or a upset 17-year-old who's technically savvy, and like they take off and take off with some of the Bitcoin. Anyway, we've already started to begun do some scenario building over how we help our customers do self-custody in the right way. And at some point, like a former student of mine who's done very well financially and just in his mid 30s is a big Bitcoin believer, and he'll do some of this stuff, but Fidelity provides a very high-end service for custodying Bitcoin on behalf of customers, and so that's what he's decided to do. So anyway, I would love to have our customers have some of those problems to where we were dealing with how to best custody significant amounts.
So my second question is a very different question. I live in a rural area in Tennessee and was intrigued by what has recently transpired here in our county. We've had about 200 acres of farm ground bought by a Chinese company for 2x the value of the land, building solar panels, and are setting up a Bitcoin data mining. I actually have a great nephew that works for them. So I'm a little curious around why the Chinese would be building such a facility in rural Tennessee. I'm curious, just why that, and why us? And there's actually going to be probably 4 in the county before they're done, and the county's had to cut them off because we don't have the power supply to continue adding in these data mining farms. So I'm just a little curious on that one.
I'll speculate and you other guys weigh in where you might have perspective. First, on the China perspective, I'm a little bit antiquated, but I worked with an American agricultural business in China, let's say 2011 to 2015 or thereabouts, and was doing lots of projects. Every time I had a Chinese agricultural business looking at doing something in the US, their first question, no matter what the business was, can I buy Iowa farmland? And I always be like, stop.
Can they buy what now?
Iowa farmland or
Iowa
US
farmland.
farmland.
Okay.
Yeah. So trying to get denominated and get money out of China into something in the US in any kind of real estate. But farmland, they just always loved the idea of it. But then being able to leverage solar, which China is the premier manufacturer of solar. So, I mean, they understand it and they get it. And then Bitcoin mining again, and I think it's probably a way of being able to have an asset that does that compounding that we talked about. And mining is a tough business, but still, if you have the right solar, if you have the right electricity sources, it can make a lot of sense from a business perspective.
I think you could add on, it's kind of perfect for the Chinese Bitcoin mining as well, because if you mine Bitcoin, well, now no one knows that you are the one that owns that Bitcoin, so they can hide their newfound wealth from any government who would like to share that with other people.
And when did they ban Bitcoin mining in China, Kale? Do you remember?
I know
2021 or 22?
they did
Yeah.
it during the 2020, 2021 bull market for sure.
So there's a bunch of people that have a lot of Bitcoin that was mined in China that then had their mines shut down, and there might be some of that reflected, Randy, and the owners of that project.
Yeah. So if you mine a Bitcoin, what exactly do you own? So Kale said you own it. So what exactly do you own? Are
So
you
you
owning
own
a data? Do you own a data set, or what is it that you own?
Yeah, the rewards, their incentives for mining blocks is new Bitcoin itself that comes out. So the cap, and this is why people say, it's a sovereign inflation hedge, is 21 million Bitcoin ever. But so right now we're at 20 million. The mining rewards have every about 4 years. And so these miners are getting paid out in Bitcoin for giving their data compute um, to verify all the transactions going through every day.
So you're mining financial transactions that you sell off to someone, essentially. That's almost what you described.
Well, you don't technically sell it off, but the network has a built-in feature to incentivize it.
So every 10 minutes, we're mining a new Bitcoin, essentially, that's made up of the different blocks that are the transactions. And so right now, at least, if you're a miner that sort of wins that new block, that's essentially $70,000 worth of Bitcoin.
And kind of aside from what you asked, as far as these, you know, here locally, Bitcoin miners, which are a couple of 40-foot shipping containers hooked into the grid, versus data centers. And I think that gets blurred with a lot of the public. They think Bitcoin mining and data centers are the same thing, one and the other. They really aren't. That's something I've learned because there's been talk about some Bitcoin mining going on in my area and concern with power consumption, just like a data center has concerns with power consumption and cooling. The flip side is the Bitcoin side can purchase and utilize off-peak electricity. So when you're seeing these huge surpluses of wind energy or solar, they can ramp up those computers, my understanding, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, virtually instantaneously. And when everyone comes home and turns on their AC and that price goes up of that surplus electricity, that goes away, they can ramp down those systems and shed load from the grid almost instantly as well. So that is unique to them, whereas your true data centers, they're on and computing 24/7, so they don't have that RAM capacity. They're just a base load user at that point. So just a differentiation, I think a lot of the public doesn't understand between the two, and I think they get blurred as being the same.
Joe, you're exactly right. There's a company headquartered in Cedar Falls named Simple Mining, and Lauren, I think you know those folks as well. So Adam Haynes is the president and founder of that business. And so the electricity companies love them because they want to build new capacity. Yeah, just like you say, Joe, they can build it so that when they are at peak and they need somebody to essentially instantaneously go down, mines can do that. And so they're building capacity for growth in manufacturing. They might be building capacity for growth in data centers. But yeah, those data centers want it, maybe not 24/7, but they don't want to be shut down. I can tell you that. And so the mines are really good because it's like, okay, we can build that as off peak. And it works from a mining perspective because then it's like, well, we don't want to buy the expensive electricity anyway because it makes mining less attractive.
Yeah, that's the whole game with mining. It's the cost of electric, and that's why they're probably looking at Tennessee or rural Iowa to do it because our cost of power compared to other places is really cheap. I farm around a really big Bitcoin mine actually, and yeah, whatever Kevin said is right. They love to harvest typically it's about 4 cent, I think, kilowatt power that they roughly half of what it is commercially, and they take advantage of all the wind that we have around here, and when they produce excess, that's what they use for mining.
So a friend of mine, Brian Sievers, has a biodigester over in the eastern part of the state. And I wish I would have understood more about Bitcoin, but we have an Iowa State University project that, anyway, he built a biodigester, and so he's getting methane off of that. And then he was generating electricity. In the early days, it was working, but then, and this won't shock some of you guys from the Mason City area, like Alliant Energy just screwed him. They're like, yeah, we'll pay you 3 cents per kilowatt hour for what you produce, but then we charge you 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour for what you buy to run your farm. And so anyway, we went through the process of helping him convert to producing renewable natural gas, which is better. But it's sort of like, God, instead of the investment in that, we should just at least done a feasibility study on a Bitcoin mine for using the methane.
I am an Alliant customer, so I have the every 5 years, let's do a 7 to 9% rate increase. So I put in solar because it's the only check and balance left there. But here at the end of March, my surplus that I've banked over the past year disappears, goes back to zero. And to that very point, now that I've run the system now for this my second year, I kind of know where my surplus is at beginning of the month. In my shop, I turn on an electric space heater and crank it up to max so I don't have to burn LP and make sure that I minimize how much I give back to Alliant for nothing.
Well, I was going to offer up Quran. We've helped Joe, a customer who's got some electricity credits, look at using simple mining to run a mine in one of his sheds. Anyway, okay, you're getting the same thing done. Good for you.
Mhm.
That's kind of how Spencer and I started down this conversation. Built a new shop and looking at putting the miner in for heating and stuff like that. And it sounds like if we could get the power cheap enough, but I'm on REC and we're not even close. So, but one question I had was, what's the tax implications long term on some of this, or how long before the government gets their fingers back into it?
Yeah, well, so the government today considers Bitcoin a capital asset. So if you sold it for a capital gain, you would be subject capital gains tax. Again, I think that will get changed in the Trump administration, and they not only have signaled but have said that that will happen. So hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. But kind of the unique thing, like, and this is actually what I should do. I told you I bought Bitcoin at 115, and we're currently at 70. What I could do is I could sell that, harvest the loss, and I could buy the Bitcoin right back. So it actually offers a little bit of tax flexibility if you're willing to put a little bit of the work in, although it's not very hard work. But that's where it's at from a sort of tax perspective right now, Lauren.
Well, I was just sent Spencer the other day. Tech or SEC had a ruling. Are you aware of that one yet?
Yeah, yeah. So a little bit of a gray area right now because, Congress is trying to push through clarity and market structure legislation. Meanwhile, the CFTC and SEC kind of sidestep them and are getting stuff out a lot faster as agencies should and have now called Bitcoin a digital commodity.
And then stable coins, I think, are pretty much the same thing, aren't they, Kale, as part of that?
Yeah, stable coins have their own designation, and there's a lot of new digital products coming out this will be, and I talk about this in our newsletter all the time, you know, what's becoming the digital assets industry, kind of emerging of all this crypto technology and traditional banks the past year have all been kind of rushing to get set up, get Bitcoin on their balance sheets, and get ready for the digital assets industry, which will be emerging of the two.
And I hadn't pulled our slide deck back up, but yeah, maybe to just got a couple of scans here. If you want to subscribe to our newsletters, those are free, no obligation. Certainly be happy to have you do that. We put out an every other week newsletter we call Long Look. We're putting out right now a daily newsletter called the BitCorn 5. If you're interested in engaging in the educational thing, certainly would invite you to do that. In terms of our ask, we've just started to accept orders on those nodes. So $500 is the price of a node, along with a subscription once we get it set. We do have a warrants program on that because the more people that we get in this community, the stronger it will become and the more valuable it will become. So our first 150 people that buy a node get warrants on 500 shares in the business. We have our attorneys just finishing up the paperwork on that and taking some inspiration from the halving schedule of Bitcoin. We'll have it after that. So the next 300 customers will get warrants on 250 shares and so on and so forth. And so anyway, our kind of race as we get up and going is how fast can we get to 10,000 farmers that have nodes as part of their farm operations.
So when you're talking about the nodes in that, is that the same? There's X amount of nodes, and then they're going to keep having till kind of the same format as the Bitcoin was set up on.
For the warrants program, correct.
Okay, because we've tied into a node program ourselves, and I know just in 2-3 months it's went up. The value of the node itself has went up considerably. So.
Hmm.
I was kind of curious how that would correspond to this, I guess.
And what kind of a node are you talking about, Lauren?
I don't know. I'm letting my wife focus on that one. I just trusted Bitcoin or something or trusted coin or something like that.
Okay. So maybe an altcoin or something.
Yeah, and how does that correspond? Because like Doge and all that, they just open up their nodes and all that. What's the difference on some of them? I guess.
Well,
We're getting to the point I can shut the recording off if you want to talk frankly.
no, nothing we don't share. Well, Kale, we haven't thought about making our warrants into an actual token of some sort, I guess. Anyway, we probably are thinking of this in a very old school way. That it will just be like a technical contract that you will have a warrant to buy so many shares of BitCorn Technologies Incorporated for a certain amount, which right now will be very low because we're right at the beginning.
Any other thoughts on that, or like I said, I know enough about it to be dangerous. That's where I would put myself right now. So, like I said,
My blunt, sorry, my blunt opinion is there's Bitcoin and there's everything else, and the rest are shit coins that can go on the recording. So that's my 2 cents. And the reason I say I don't want to be too flippant with that. I actually own some altcoins personally. It's just a very small amount. In case some of them would happen to tick. But when you, what I want to make this one point for people, because everybody that feels naive and dumb on this call right now, I was 100% in your spot 5 years ago when I got interested. I was asking all the same questions. The thing I can't under or overestimate enough is, or oversuggest enough, is to, planting season's coming. It's a great time to be sitting in a tractor, to have time to focus and listen to podcasts and educate yourself. It's only when they say it takes 100 hours of work to understand this, and it truly does. And I didn't get to that point until I did that. So I would really encourage, you're not going to learn everything you need to know on a Zoom on a Friday morning about this. So I would really encourage you to take a deeper dive. And it's been a really good thing for me. And I just, yeah, want it. But I do believe that Bitcoin is the biggest opportunity that we have right now. So
You're on mute, Bob. Still on mute.
Zach, to that point, there's Bitcoin and then there's everybody else. What does the death curve look like for the everybody else? What happens? How do you know? You used a pretty descriptive term there, and I relate to that. How do you know? I mean, what's the downside risk of picking the wrong one, or going with startup versus going with the established Bitcoin?
The reason I say there's Bitcoin and there's everything else is because Bitcoin is the only one that is not controlled by a person or a company. It's decentralized. It's code that exists on software across the world. The only way that it could be eliminated or killed in totality is that if all power ceased to exist on the planet. That's the only thing that would ever kill it. So not everything else. When you understand how it works and all the complexities of the network and SHA-256 hash and all of the things, like it actually starts to make sense. But when that's the simplest way I can put it. It's not controlled by man. It's controlled by code, and everyone can. That's the beautiful thing about what Kevin is offering with the node. A node is basically access to the whole thing, which is the blockchain. And you can buy Bitcoin and have it on an exchange or hold it in an ETF, but if you truly want to own it and be sovereign, you need to have a node to be able to transact directly on the blockchain. And if I wanted to give it to you peer to peer, that's really what the node allows. And I haven't done it yet. Kevin's going to set me up here probably before spring. And I'm really excited to.
Parts are ordered, Zach.
Yeah, so
that's really helpful, I guess. So the node is the access point versus going through a third party, and you no longer have that third party involved. You are the third party. You are physically handing that bushel of corn to the other person in trade, that piece of silver, that dollar bill. The node enables you to do that transaction, if I caught that correctly.
That's exactly right. And that's why, honestly, one of the reasons the Trump administration is so friendly to this is when they got debanked after January 6th. They went so hard in this because when the powers that be shut you off, this is a way that they can't do that. The government can't come in and control what you do on a node. It's impossible. And so that's what gives it value.
Yeah, and Zach, I was at the Bitcoin conference last May, and Don Jr. and Eric Trump were in front of the crowd, and like the warmth of the Bitcoin community for the Trump family, was weird. But yeah, I'm just this dude from Iowa, right? And I'm watching it, but somebody just asked the question that you just addressed, like why? And they talked about banks that they'd done business with for decades, shutting them out of their bank accounts. And it's like, oh God, like, okay, yeah, they're true believers with good reason.
So a couple other, I'm sorry.
One thing I'll add to that is that everyone in that administration in the cabinet, they all hold it, and they are all heavily invested. Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, I think he's got hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin currently. So the people in power right now are all building the political infrastructure for this to go, and most people don't realize what's happening. So
I had two questions. So the node itself, do I plug that into my computer to access it? It's a nuts and bolts question. So I've got this node, and how do I get in there to the brain power that it has?
Yeah, I could take this one. It's just two cords. One is a simple plug into your wall for power, and then the other one is an Ethernet cord. So you connect it to your router or your internet device that you have at home, and then it just sits there plugged in, and you can access it via your laptop, your phone, and you not necessarily even have to be on the same network. there's also a way to access it if you were in a different state, different country as well at the same time, but a VPN access that we could set up too. So it's not just restricted to where you have to be on the same Wi-Fi to access it.
Does it operate wirelessly as well?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty neat. And then, Zach, I apologize for the statement I'm going to make now. I try not to hang out in absolutes, and I have seen what computer people have done to my computer remotely with me not even around. So I'm hesitant when someone says it's impossible for a government to stop something or somebody to hack it. That's maybe it's 99.9%, but they're not going to be able to do it. But I struggle a little bit with impossible. I do not trust, and I confess openly because I've seen what people can do with computers remotely. And anyway, I apologize for the dialogue on that.
You're right. I appreciate you challenging me on that because I'm incorrect in stating that it's impossible. There are ways for it to happen. They're just substantially less likely than what exists currently in threats of being hacked. Like me personally to my bank account, there is. I mean, one of the biggest risks to Bitcoin, and you need to understand this, is quantum computing. And I'm not as technical as what the other guys are, but that is something that that could potentially in the coming years be able to break the code essentially, or your 24 words to gain access to stuff. So that is definitely a risk. However, the risk is far greater to your bank account or all of the other assets that you would hold through like Schwab.
Yes.
The level of security for Bitcoin is here. Those things are here. But as the value of holdings in Bitcoin go up, that target will be sought after as well. And so the good news is there's mechanisms for Bitcoin to adapt to that. And that's really one of the biggest issues right now in the Bitcoin community is figuring out how that's going to happen. But I'll let the other guys speak to that technical stuff.
Yeah, one of the cool things about Bitcoin being open source is you have the smartest people in the world actively working on how to upgrade it and make it better, 24/7. And so, Zach, to your point, BIP 360 was recently launched where they're putting in an effort to figure out how to make Bitcoin completely quantum resistant. And Bitcoin, of all things, like many other issues, has the best chance out of any other asset or any other monetary system to be able to overcome quantum risk. Everything else will get taken out before Bitcoin does.
I think I just got my word for the day, quantum resistant. That sounds interesting. I like the 100 hour reference for a person that was just curious. Is there a book, a document, a website? Where would one start? Where's the entry to the garden path gate at? What's that look like?
I'll tell you what I did and I'll let everybody else go. The Bitcoin standard, you can get it for, I don't know, 20, $30 on Amazon by Safadine Amos, or yeah, that's how you say his name. But that's what I read. And then after that, there's tons of stuff on YouTube. Michael Saylor is probably the biggest prophet that a lot of people follow. I would ingest a lot of Michael Saylor YouTube, I guess, over the course of the spring personally.
Lawrence Lepard wrote a book called The Big Print. And he, like me, was a gold bug, so I was always like, why can't we put the dollar back on gold? And he kind of comes from the same perspective, except he's actually and still has a fund that's a gold investor, is in gold mines and gold processors and stuff like that. And I've met a really good guy. We may still try to get him on our BitCorn podcast.
Thanks, guys. That's helpful.
Kevin, did you say you have a podcast?
Yeah, we just started it. Zach was our most recent guest, called the BitCorn podcast.
Okay, thank you.
You can send me a link to that. I'll make sure you get it, Randy. I've watched a few episodes on it, but I guess we're along past the top of the hour. But if anybody's got to go, I understand. But what would be next steps our people want to take? I guess that's we talked about doing a live meeting and that. I figured this would be a great first step. I mean, if guys are interested in doing a live Bitcoin meeting or something like that.
Yeah, we've been doing, I would call them listening sessions. This talk about money is so fundamental. We have our ideas, but we're just interested in where everybody comes at it from our perspective too. And we're so early in our kind of journey building. So yeah, let us know. We'd be happy to come up if you've got kind of a group of people. Literally, we've come to places and we buy some food and some beer and just have a conversation. But you can sign up for our email. I did not put a link for our podcast, but you can come to our website. You can buy a node, but this will take you to our website too. You can see kind of links to our podcast and our different content and all that stuff.
So
But
I'm on phone right now, but Lauren or something, could you send maybe, I guess I can snip this or try and open it a different way.
and
Anyway, so we can get there.
I'll send Lauren the PowerPoint.
Yep. And like I said, I'll send you the link in that, Joe and Randy and Mark and Bob if you want. So like I
And
said,
maybe related, I got a couple written down, but a couple of those other mentions for potential resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I will do that. Mhm.
and like I said, I see it just put it in the chat. I don't know if that'll show up for future watchers, but we usually get a few hits on this after Kathy posted on her. It'll be on our YouTube page for Ag Venture Alliance and that. So I'm gonna shut off the recording now.